In 2000, a Chinese farmer spent more than 1 billion yuan to raise fish in the desert. Well, how can fish be raised in the desert? Do fish eat sand? However, many years later, the man earned 80 million a year from the fish in the desert. How on earth did he do it? Yanzhong used to be a rich man with a net worth of over 300 million yuan, but now he does not look like a rich man at all. He has gray hair, wears an old camouflage uniform, and walks through the desert every day. So, how many unknown sadness and despair are there? In today's video, let's take a look at this desert fish farming base that costs billions and the brave man behind it. Okay, let's get started. Yanzhong was born in Yongdeng County, Gansu Province, in 1962. After graduating from high school, he returned to the village and saw a newspaper by chance. The newspaper mentioned that the 24 rainbow trout presented to China by Kim Il-sung not only succeeded in trial breeding in Heilongjiang, but also successfully settled in Beijing. Yanzhong suddenly thought of Yuan Spring in his hometown, where the water temperature is kept at about 8 degrees Celsius all year round, and the spring water is clear. Why can't we seize this good natural condition and try to raise rainbow trout? As soon as this idea appeared, it grew crazily in Yanzhong's mind. He immediately set off for Beijing to buy fish species. He called the villagers together to dig ponds and open canals, thus attracting water from Yuan Spring. Later, he spent huge sums of money to invite experts to design a series of fish pond facilities such as disinfection ponds, sewage ditch, and secondary oxygen enhancement. From then on, under the leadership of Yanzhong, the fish farming business in Yongdeng County began. A few years later, in 1989, Yanzhong led the villagers to develop 15 fish ponds. At this time, the annual output of fish ponds had reached 50,000 kilograms, making it the largest fishery in Yongdeng County. As a result, the villagers became rich one after another, and Yongdeng County became the famous hometown of rainbow trout in China. In fact, at that time, Yanzhong's assets had already reached hundreds of millions of yuan. After getting a huge profit return, Yanzhong's fish farming business did not stop there, and he wanted to continue to expand the scale of farming. He had an idea that shocked everyone's jaws. He thought that since the water of Yuan Spring comes from Qilian Glacier, why not build a line from Qilian Glacier to Yangguan Town along the Heshi Corridor? However, Yangguan Town is located at the easternmost end of the desert, and it is Dunhuan's first line of defense against sandstorms. It is full of yellow sand, and it is inaccessible and extremely desolate. Yanzhong recalled this past event and said, "Those friends who were in business with me were crying when they came to this place. They said you were so stupid." At that time, rich people were either engaged in real estate or mining. Why did you invest your money in the desert? In the face of opposition and doubts from all sides, Yanzhong remained unmoved and insisted on his desert fish pond. In March 2001, Yanzhong came to Yangguan Town, the westernmost tip of Qilian Glacier, and started his desert fish farming project. When he first arrived, he was taken aback by the sight in front of him. The severity of reality was much crueler than he had imagined. After making a decision, Yanzhong immediately led the workers to start construction. The first step is to dig a river channel. Yanzhong originally thought that the desert is full of sand, so it should be very easy to dig a river channel. But the reality gave him a heavy blow. The sand dunes are covered with iron-like rocks. If you want to dig a river, you must first blast these rocks. However, another problem lay in front of him, and his construction vehicle could hardly move an inch in the desert. In desperation, Yanzhong had no choice but to build the road wherever the project went. After more than 2 years, a technology park and cold water fish base appeared in the desert. At this time, Yanzhong, full of hope, introduced 800,000 rainbow trout and started his road of desert fish farming. The first blow occurred in June 2004, when a huge dust storm swept across there, and the sky turned dark all of a sudden, with sand and rocks flying everywhere. The 3-story building of Yanzhong base was vulnerable to the raging sandstorm. 80% of the fish pond was buried by the wind and sand, causing a large number of rainbow trout to die. Soon, the cruel reality made another huge joke for him. He would never have imagined that in the perennially dry desert area, floods would become a serious concern to him. In the summer of this year, a catastrophic flood destroyed most of the diversion canals and other engineering facilities in the industrial park, and all the rebuilt facilities were washed away by the flood and destroyed again. He had to face up to the difficulties again. He led his staff to build several flood diversion dams at the source of Chilean Glacier, where meltwater from snow-capped mountains converged to withstand the attack of upstream floods. The good times don't last long. Just when hope was rekindled, a heavier blow came again. Floods are not rare visitors in the desert. Floods of all sizes will visit here every once in a while. There were 18 large and small sandstorms and floods, and the places where the wind, sand, and floods went were devastated. The raging disaster exhausted Yanzhong. He stared at the mess and remained silent for a long time. Facing the cruel reality, he also felt disheartened and once planned to give up. Before leaving, he decided to walk the desert where he had sweated for the last time, even though this land had never treated him kindly. But a turning point also appeared from this. He found a dead tree in the depths of the desert, but new shoots sprouted beside the tree. It was this small but powerful cluster of new sprouting that gave Yanzhong great encouragement. Yanzhong rekindled hope. He understood that since he chose the desert, he should be prepared to fight a protracted war with it, so he decided to stay and continue to complete his unfinished business. The assets he brought at the beginning had been exhausted in several blows, and he returned to his hometown in Lanzhou to sell the property, borrowed part of the money, and returned to the desert again. In 2015, Yanzhong spent a lot of money to specially invite domestic and foreign ecological and water conservancy experts to come here for field surveys. Under the guidance of experts, they went deep into Chilean mountains many times to explore the source and path of floods. After finding the water source, Yanzhong immediately led the workers to build 19 dredging dams with a total length of more than 60 kilometers in the upper reaches to regulate and store the flood layer by layer. Then penetrate and purify layer by layer through the desert, turning the floodwater into usable water. On this basis, Yanzhong began to plant red willow and other vegetation on a large scale to restore the degraded ecosystem. The larger-scale desertification control project came from an accident after much deliberation. Well, Yanzhong took a friend to visit the Crescent Lake in Dunhuang. This spring surrounded by mountains has not been buried for thousands of years, and it is still green and clear, which aroused his thinking. He asked the locals if anyone knew the key to this, but the locals said it was because of the blessing of the gods. In order to verify his observations, Yanzhong started an experiment. He piled up a 1-meter-high sand barrier with sand and stones. After a period of time, he found that the effect was remarkable. As long as you find the direction of the sandstorm, the sand barrier can make the quicksand retreat 5 meters. If the sand barrier is raised to 10 meters, the quicksand will retreat 50 meters. Soon, his experiment was promoted on a large scale in the desert. A 21-kilometer-long sand barrier was built at the Kumtag Desert, like a desert Great Wall, to protect Yangguan town from sandstorms and effectively prevent the advancement of desertification. Under the command of Yanzhong, the workers are rebuilding the rainbow trout fish farming base while preventing floods and controlling sand. Yanzhong always plunged into the desert with 2 bottles of water and a few pieces of dry food. He has experienced such dangers as being swept away by floods and falling to the ground by sandstorms. But no matter how hard it was, it didn't dampen his ambition. During the period, many people around him advised Yanzhong not to invest too much money in eco-environmental protection. It does not make money. It is worth being able to control the flood and retreat the desert. Yanzhong replied. After many hardships, at the beginning of 2019, this huge desert was finally completed. With his unyielding spirit, Yanzhong fought against the floods in the desert for 18 years, forcing back more than 600,000 square kilometers of sandy land, and his cold water fish business gradually got on the right track. Well, thanks for listening. If you have any suggestions, just leave them in the comments section. We'll come back as soon as possible and check them, and then we'll give feedback. See you next time.